2026 Indian Springfield Dark Horse, the American cruiser you didn't know you needed. There are motorcycles that simply get you from one place to another, and then there are motorcycles that make the journey the entire point. The 2026 Indian Springfield Dark Horse belongs firmly in that second category. At first glance, it looks like a classic American cruiser that has been pulled straight out of another era. But look closer, and you discover something far more serious hiding underneath that dark exterior. This is not just another chrome-heavy touring motorcycle. Indian has taken the Springfield formula, stripped away much of the traditional shine, added an aggressive blacked-out personality, and created a machine that looks ready to turn every highway into its personal stage. The 2026 Springfield Dark Horse starts at $24,999 US MSRP before destination, handling, taxes, registration, and other charges. And the real shock comes when you look at what sits between those intimidating frame rails. An air-cooled Thunderstroke 116 V-twin displacing 1,890 cc, producing a claimed 126 pound-feet of peak torque at 2,900 revolutions per minute. So the question isn't whether this motorcycle looks good, it absolutely does. The real question is whether the Springfield Dark Horse could be one of the most complete old-school American touring cruisers available for riders who want attitude without giving up practicality. And once you see what Indian has packed into this machine, you may understand why this motorcycle deserves far more attention than it is getting. The first thing that grabs your attention is the design, because the Dark Horse name isn't being used as a marketing decoration. Indian describes the Springfield Dark Horse as having a completely blacked-out design, with mid-rise handlebars and a valenced front fender carrying the illuminated Indian headdress. Instead of drowning the motorcycle in bright chrome, the Dark Horse treatment gives it a much more sinister presence. The contrast-cut 19-inch front wheel sits prominently beneath the front end, while the open styling around the wheel gives the motorcycle a custom bike attitude straight from the factory. It is the kind of machine that doesn't need an enormous fairing or futuristic bodywork to attract attention. Its proportions do the work. The long silhouette, substantial engine, low seat, wide stance, sweeping fender, and dark finishes create a visual identity that is unmistakably American. And that is where the Springfield Dark Horse becomes interesting. It doesn't try to pretend it is a lightweight sport bike. It doesn't attempt to disguise its mass. Instead, it embraces the idea that a big motorcycle should look big. It looks substantial because it is substantial. Yet the black finish visually tightens the entire package, making this heavyweight cruiser appear more aggressive than the traditional Springfield. If you are the kind of rider who thinks motorcycles should have personality before they even start the engine, the Dark Horse has already won half the battle. But styling only gets you so far, because eventually you have to twist the throttle. And this is where the Springfield Dark Horse starts showing its muscles. The Thunderstroke 116 is an air-cooled V-twin with 1,890 cc of displacement, a compression ratio of 11.01, and peak torque arriving at just 2,900 revolutions per minute. That torque figure, 126 pound-feet, is the number that tells you what kind of motorcycle this is. This isn't an engine designed to make you chase the rev limiter. It is designed to deliver a deep, immediate wave of pulling power when you roll on the throttle. Indian specifically describes that torque as providing passing power through all 6 gears. Imagine settling into a long highway stretch, the engine pulsing beneath you, and then rolling the throttle open without needing to make the motorcycle scream for attention. That's the character of a large displacement American 5 twin. It is relaxed when you want it to be relaxed, but when you demand acceleration, there is a serious reserve of muscle waiting underneath. The 6-speed transmission also gives the Springfield enough flexibility for different riding situations, whether you're moving through town or stretching your legs on an open highway. And because the torque arrives low in the rev range, the experience isn't about frantic acceleration. It's about effortless momentum. That's an important distinction. Because this motorcycle isn't trying to turn every ride into a race. It wants you to feel powerful without making you work for it. Now let's talk about something that many riders overlook until they actually live with a motorcycle. Practicality. The Springfield Dark Horse may look like a custom cruiser, but Indian has not forgotten that this machine is designed to travel. Standard equipment includes remote locking hard saddlebags with 18 gallons of storage, giving the motorcycle a surprisingly useful cargo capacity. That means the Springfield Dark Horse isn't merely something you take out for a short evening ride before putting it back in the garage. It can serve as a genuine long-distance companion. Add the two-up gunfighter-style seat and passenger pegs, and the motorcycle becomes much more than a solo cruiser. You can carry a passenger, pack your essentials, and head out for a weekend, without immediately needing to transform the bike with aftermarket luggage. There is also a 5.5-gallon fuel tank, which gives the machine the kind of capacity you'd expect from a serious road-going motorcycle. The low 26.5-inch seat height is another important part of the Springfield experience. For a motorcycle of this size, that low seat can make mounting, stopping, and maneuvering feel more approachable. Of course, nobody should confuse low seat height with low weight. The Springfield Dark Horse has a listed running order weight of 776 pounds, so this remains a serious machine that demands respect at very low speeds. But once moving, that mass becomes part of the motorcycle's character, rather than simply a disadvantage. And then there is the technology, or, more accurately, the decision not to overload the motorcycle with technology. In an era when motorcycles increasingly resemble smartphones on two wheels, the Springfield Dark Horse takes a different approach. Its instrumentation consists of a 4-inch analog gauge with a speedometer, indicator lamps, and multifunction display, while Indian lists Ride Command and Ride Command Plus as unavailable on this model. Some riders might look at that and immediately call it outdated, but others will see it as one of the motorcycle's biggest strengths. The Springfield Dark Horse isn't trying to become a rolling electronics platform. It keeps the focus on the road, the engine, the physical experience, and the design. Yet that doesn't mean it is primitive. Standard equipment includes ABS, selectable ride modes, cruise control, keyless ignition, and tire pressure monitoring. That combination is fascinating because it gives you modern convenience and rider-focused technology without covering the cockpit in giant screens. You get cruise control for long highway runs, selectable ride modes for adjusting the motorcycle's character, keyless ignition for convenience, and tire pressure monitoring for an additional layer of awareness. In other words, Indian appears to have focused on technology that supports the ride, rather than technology that becomes the ride. And for someone shopping specifically for a traditional American cruiser, that could be exactly the right philosophy. Of course, a motorcycle this large has to convince you that it can actually handle more than a straight highway. The Springfield Dark Horse uses a telescopic front fork with 4.7 inches of travel and a single rear shock with air adjustment offering 4.5 inches of rear travel. At the front, dual 300mm floating rotors with 4-piston calipers provide braking hardware appropriate for a machine of this size, while the rear uses a 300mm floating rotor with a 2-piston caliper. The 19-inch front and 16-inch rear wheel combination contributes to the motorcycle's distinctive stance, while Metzeler CruiseTech tires are fitted from the factory. Indian lists a 31-degree lean angle, along with a 25-degree rake and 5.2-inch trail. That doesn't transform the Springfield into a sport bike, and it isn't supposed to. Instead, the goal is to give riders a confident, planted cruiser that can deal with sweeping roads while maintaining the relaxed character expected from the platform. This is a motorcycle for riders who want to cover serious distances without feeling like they're sitting on top of a touring appliance. The riding position, low seat, mid-rise bars, floorboards, and substantial chassis create an experience that feels more like commanding the road than attacking it. And when the road opens up in front of you, that's where the Springfield Dark Horse starts to make the most sense. The biggest surprise, however, may be how deliberately Indian has positioned this motorcycle. The Springfield Dark Horse sits between worlds. It has the visual drama of a custom cruiser, the luggage capacity of a touring motorcycle, the engine character of a classic American 5-twin, and enough modern equipment to make everyday riding easier. It isn't as technologically loaded as some premium touring motorcycles, and it isn't as stripped down as a pure custom cruiser. That middle ground is exactly what makes it compelling. You don't necessarily buy this motorcycle because you want the most horsepower, the biggest display, or the lightest chassis. You buy it because you want a motorcycle with presence. The Springfield Dark Horse looks like something you could ride across several states, park outside a small-town diner, and still have people walk over just to ask what it is. And that matters. Motorcycles are emotional purchases as much as they are mechanical ones. Specifications can tell you the displacement, torque, dimensions, and weight, but they cannot completely explain what happens when you walk into your garage and see a machine like this waiting for you. Indian understands that emotional side of motorcycling extremely well. The Dark Horse treatment is designed to make the motorcycle feel special before the engine even fires, and the Thunderstroke 116 gives that visual attitude a mechanical voice to match. There is also something undeniably attractive about the contrast between old-school engineering and modern execution. The Springfield Dark Horse's engine is air-cooled, its gauge is analog, and its styling is deeply rooted in American motorcycle heritage. Yet the motorcycle also brings fuel injection, ABS, ride modes, cruise control, keyless ignition, LED lighting, tire pressure monitoring, and remote locking luggage. That mixture is arguably the whole point. You aren't being forced to choose between a nostalgic motorcycle and a modern motorcycle. You get a little of both. Even the lighting follows that philosophy, with LED headlamp, driving, tail, brake, and turn signals listed as standard equipment. The motorcycle's dimensions tell another story. It stretches 99.3 inches in length, rides on a 67-inch wheelbase, and offers 5.1 inches of ground clearance. Those numbers reinforce the visual impression. This is not a compact urban cruiser. This is a full-size American road machine. And while that size can be intimidating, the low seat and substantial torque make the overall riding concept surprisingly approachable for experienced riders who understand how to manage a heavyweight motorcycle. The Springfield Dark Horse is about momentum, stability, comfort, and confidence, not frantic movement. Now comes the question that every potential buyer eventually asks: is it worth the money? With a starting US MSRP of $24,999, the 2026 Indian Springfield Dark Horse occupies serious premium cruiser territory. That's not pocket change, and once destination charges, taxes, registration, dealer costs, accessories, and other expenses are included, the final number can climb higher. But the value proposition isn't simply about engine size. You're getting the Thunderstroke 116, hard luggage, 2-up seating, ABS, ride modes, cruise control, keyless ignition, tire pressure monitoring, LED lighting, and a design that is clearly differentiated from ordinary touring motorcycles. And perhaps most importantly, you're getting a motorcycle that doesn't look like everything else in the parking lot. The standard Springfield starts at $23,999, while the Dark Horse begins $1,000 higher in the United States. For riders who prefer the blacked-out aesthetic and custom-inspired personality, that difference could make the Dark Horse the obvious choice. It isn't trying to be the cheapest way into a big American cruiser. It is trying to be the motorcycle you choose because you cannot stop looking at it. So is the 2026 Indian Springfield Dark Horse the motorcycle that could make traditional American cruisers exciting again? Maybe the better question is, did traditional American cruisers ever stop being exciting? The Springfield Dark Horse proves that the formula still works when the ingredients are carefully balanced. You get the enormous presence of a full-size cruiser, the deep torque of a 1,890cc Thunderstroke 116, practical hard luggage, a low seat, modern rider aids, and a blacked-out design that looks ready for trouble even when you're simply heading out for coffee. It isn't the motorcycle for everyone. Riders chasing maximum electronic technology may want something else. Riders looking for an ultralight machine should absolutely look elsewhere. And anyone who expects a heavyweight cruiser to behave like a sport bike will quickly discover that physics still applies. But for the rider who wants character, presence, comfort, torque, and genuine touring ability, the Springfield Dark Horse makes a powerful argument. It doesn't scream for attention with futuristic gimmicks. It earns attention through proportion, sound, torque, and attitude. This is a motorcycle that seems to say, you don't need to prove anything, just ride. And that might be the most dangerous thing about it, because once you imagine yourself behind those bars, rolling onto an open highway with 126 pound-feet of torque underneath you, the idea of choosing something ordinary suddenly becomes a lot harder. The 2026 Indian Springfield Dark Horse isn't merely another motorcycle in Indian's lineup. It is a statement on two wheels, and for riders who want their motorcycle to feel like an event every time they start it, that statement may be impossible to ignore.